So I'm going to allow Dr. Felder-McEntire to introduce herself, but just in case you weren't with us earlier this morning, we're going to leave everyone on mute by default. Feel free to turn your videos off, but we will be monitoring the chat. So if you have feedback, questions, feel free to share your name, where you're coming from if you're just joining us, and we'll field some questions the last 10 minutes or so, and we'll just take it from there. So make sure y'all have y'all notes and that you're doing some active learning, and then I will turn it over to our presenter.
All right, fantastic. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone. Alicia, do we have it on gallery view so you can still see my picture beside the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. So I see your presentation in the main picture, and then I see you right above it.
Okay, fantastic. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Dr. Chaka Felder-McEntire. I am a supervisor of school counseling in Connecticut. And I am going to present to you today on a topic that will be a little similar to Dana's presentation, but we're going to have a couple of ouches. I really have to forewarn you about some of the things that we're going to discuss today. And as Alicia said, please feel free to put your comments and questions into the chat so we can move forward. But I'm hoping that today's presentation will really do and give you a deep reflection of our role as school counselors and the work that we're doing right now in this very difficult time of racial and social and health unrest. Because it is very difficult right now to be a school counselor, and it is even more difficult to be a Black school counselor, just to be very transparent there. So in the interest of sharing so that we can all continue to network with each other, I just want to tell you a little bit about me. I've been in education now for over 20 years. I love the work that I do. I'm an administrator in education as well. Started in the area of school counseling, and now I'm a district administrator. And I have done school level work, district level work, and state level work. I'm also one of the co-founders of a charter school here in Connecticut called Booker T. Washington Academy. That work has led me to do a lot of trainings in terms of D&I work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work with schools, performance evaluations with schools, but my sweet spot is college and career readiness. And I am sincerely unapologetic about how I feel that all students should have access to equity and to a quality education. So we're gonna kind of dig into those pieces today. And so the purpose of today's conversation is to really give Black school counselors real and authentic skills that they need to lead right now in this space that we're in, because we are in unprecedented times. And if we don't get this right, you know, our profession was already suffering. But if we don't get this piece right, we're going to be in a lot of trouble down the road. So some norms for today. This is a safe space, but I did tell you that we will have some ouches. I want you to be in your truth. I want you to acknowledge your pain, your anxiety, your fears, and your confusion during this time. But ultimately, I want us to use each other as a network moving forward. And before I continue, I just really want to give blessings and kudos to Keisha for doing this work. Really, really appreciate you for putting this together. And Alicia, thank you for being the facilitator behind the scenes, because that's not easy. So leading during tough times. Right now, we are in a global pandemic. And then on top of that, we have social unrest. And if you are living in the States right now, you're also seeing a high uptick in local crime and urban crime. Chicago, Brooklyn, Detroit. We're seeing lots and lots of crime that's impacting or a result thereof of a lot of the racism and the health disparities that are existing right now. So we play a critical role in our schools and in our communities as school counselors. But I want to say of APA, we are living in a racism pandemic, which is taking a heavy psychological toll on every African American citizen. She puts it very plain and simple, and to really let you know that the stress that is being caused by racism can contribute to the development of cardiovascular and other physical diseases. And, I want us to remember that, because as Black people, we have post traumatic stress disorder from the historic racism that has been put upon us. And we bring those attitudes and those perspectives and those feelings and those emotions and those traumatic experiences into the workplace. And so, how does that even manifest in our work? How does that manifest in how we feel? How does that manifest in our interactions with our colleagues? And how does that manifest into the work that we do with our students? But my question right now is, what does it really mean to even be human right now? And so my name is Chaka. I was born and I was named after Chaka Khan. So my spirit really rests in music, to be honest with you. And for me right now, with everything that's going on, I can only put my emotions into song. So follow me here on this roller coaster ride, if you will. Because this is how I feel right now, as being a human in this space, and having dual roles as an administrator, as a school counselor, and then as a mom and as a wife and as a community member, like multiple roles and responsibilities. So here is how I feel on a day-to-day basis. Real talk, guys. I wake up like, yes, fight the power. Let's go. I got this. I can do this. And then reality kind of seeps in a little bit, and I'm feeling like strange fruit. Now, if you know these songs, I hope you do, to be honest with you. If you don't, that's some homework for you. But then I start to, think about strange fruit, and I'm like, listen, southern trees bearing strange fruit, blood in my yard. These are all the feelings that I go from high to low. And then I start thinking about all of our Black and brown students who we serve. What are we going to do when you grow up? Little Black boys. Then I'm stepping back and I'm like, seriously, what is really, really going on? Mother, everyone thinks we're going wrong. Marvin Gaye. And then I land like, nah, we are not going to be defeated. We are going to stand strong. And I know I've been broken into pieces, but I know God won't give me more than I can bear, right? And I land on God's property. So seriously, that is the emotional roller coaster that I go through on a day-to-day basis right now with this health crisis that's happening, this social unrest and this racial unrest. There's so much that goes on, and you bring all of these feelings and all of these experiences into your workspace and then even into your personal lives. So how do you manage it all? That's not the conversation for today. The conversation today is not how we manage it all. It's the reverse. The conversation I want to have with you, and this is waiting, in our role, because we've gotten to this space, because we've earned our degrees, we have the employment, some of us have the leadership, some of us are at the table, we are there. Are we a part of the problem? Are we perpetuating what is going on? How much self-reflection are we having with ourselves to make sure and racial barriers that exist for our Black and brown children? That is a very serious question to ask. And I know the conference is feeding you with positive things, but this conversation today, my presentation is that ouch. And no apologies, but we get to a place of our own privilege, but we may be a part of the problem if we're not being self-reflective in what we're doing and how we are progressing in our profession. So what does it mean right now to be a Black leader in education? And I want to give you some history here. I don't know if it was founded in 1902 by Miss Charlotte Hawkins Brown in North Carolina. And I know this school, this was a school founded by Miss Hawkins and a small group of other Black leaders in a one segregation came into existence, where education was quality, where education was key, where the family was raising the family. And there was an expectation very early on of our young people that they were going to be great, that no rules could be broken. My mother told a story to me yesterday. Her and her friends, they still connect, the Palmer Institute students, they still have a strong connection to one another. And she said to me there was a situation where the senior class went into town, into Greensboro, North Carolina, against Mrs. Brown's rules, and she sent them home, back to their homes, because this was a boarding school. She sent them home for 2 weeks just because they broke that one rule. And I laughed, but my mother didn't. She was like, Chaka, you just don't understand how serious that was. The rule was that we could not leave campus because of, right, all of the lynchings that were happening, all of the crime that were happening to Black people back then, to go off campus, and they wanted to go into town. And they actually risked their lives in doing that. Thank goodness no one got hurt, but a rule was a rule. And it made me think about, have we settled in our expectations for our students because we are negotiating this political climate, because we're negotiating what education looks like right now, right? So just a self-reflective moment. This is the house where Palmer Memorial Institute started. That house still exists. It is a national landmark. Feel free to go visit it if you want. I've been in that house. It has very spiritual connections there. And this is the last standing group. The lady where I have the arrow is my mom, right in the center. This is history. And it makes me feel very self-reflective as a Black leader as to what we are doing. And this is, for me, in my face, history as to what they had to sacrifice many years ago, going away to school underneath one woman's vision that excellence was going to be great, that they would all be great. Everyone in this picture is an excellent either leader, business person, educator. Everyone is excellent, right? So are we doing the same in our role? And so what it means to be a Black school counselor right now in education, I'm going back to that roller coaster ride of musical emotions. Right now, you have multiple roles. You're a problem solver. You're being a soundboard for maybe your white allies. You are the racial healer. You are a publicist. They're thinking that you speak for all Black people in your profession or in your town or district or state, whatever. You're the peacemaker. And then you also have that dual role of being now that we as school counselors have to experience in our leadership, that it can be overwhelming. The amount of, again, PTSD that we're carrying into our workplace because of the history that we have, that we bring to the table. We can't get rid of that, right? But what are we doing? How are we showing up right now? And here's where we're going to start getting into the ouches. I do this training for multiple administrators across the state here. I call it the PPP process. This is going to be deep, leadership reflection. So if you want us to take some notes, here we go, take some notes. So let's just start with the first P, which is policy. We're going to go through each policy as a Black educational leader. Now I'm going to take the word school counselor out of that, because at the end of the day, everyone, you are Black educational leaders. You are leaders. So in your leadership reflection, and then in the workplace, is it also clearly written and understood? Does it address equity, diversity, and inclusion? Or are we just showing up happy that we are at the table. Another piece of this, okay, is do we have a strong voter registration program in your school for rising 18-year-olds? And you're like, Chaka, where did that just come from? That's like left field. Well, no, it's not. If you think about, the process of civic education, of what civic education means to us as Black people, then we need to be instilling that as well in our policy for our Black and Brown children and making it a part of disciplinary policies and procedures marginalize Black students. Are we perpetuating that by not acknowledging that? By just going with the flow and just saying, okay, this is the policy, but does the policy marginalize Black and Brown students? Just look at the policy. Recently I had a situation in the school where a Black student had on the exact same outfit as a white student, and the Black student was reprimanded for her outfit because she had curves. So her body just presented differently in the same outfit than the white student. And are we perpetuating those policies and procedures, right? By not addressing them, by not advocating for our students and standing up for our students. Chromebook school, all right, Chaka, you're like, that's left field. Where did that come from? Here's the thing. What we've learned during COVID is that our technology divide just brought everything to the surface, put it right in our faces. We know that our rural districts and our urban districts do not have the same resources as our suburban districts, guys. We know that, truth be told. And all COVID did was just bring it to the forefront. And so in our roles, in your role as a school counselor, how can you advocate to make sure that your school, and I just use Chromebook as an example, it could be Mac, it could be whatever your heart's desire, but how do you make sure that your school is a one-to-one technology school, 1-to-1, okay? Because I can tell you, as soon as COVID hit, the suburban districts, kids walked out of there able to stay connected during COVID. And in our urban school districts, right, we all know the story, right? What is needed from the community to make sure that each home is equipped with quality Wi-Fi? And I hope my Wi-Fi doesn't go in and out during this presentation, Lord knows. But, what do we do? A lot of us in our communities, we're community members. You belong to either fraternities or sororities or other civic organizations or churches. How are you using that collective power as a community-based civic organization to have conversations with, your cable companies to make sure just not Wi-Fi, right? But quality Wi-Fi so they can have access to an equitable education, right? So that's a very deep leadership policy reflective piece because that is all policy, right? Let's move on to the next P, process. All right. Do a deep dive to examine the psychological processes that impact decision-making within your school district. I will use a very clear example, the special education process, right? What are the psychological processes that impact your district that have detrimental impact on Black and Brown students? We know it is research that more and more Black and Brown boys are diagnosed with ADHD. And there have been conversations during COVID that parents are saying, I don't know why my child was, given this diagnosis. I have been able to educate with and to my child just fine during this time. I don't see that my child has a reading deficit, like all of those different things. Now, there might be some situations where, yes, that is the case, but there are some situations where we may be perpetuating the processes, the psychological processes for the impact of those decisions for our students. In hiring. Now, I'm going to use this as an example that I'm aware of. You can use this, modify this example in your districts. Do you have more para educators of color than you do certified teachers? Do you have more tutors of color than you have teachers? Right? Our students need to see more Black and Brown teachers, certified teachers. in front of them, then they see all of those disciplinary positions. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. Awesome. Have your teachers, is your curriculum inclusive? Is your curriculum inclusive? Now, when I say inclusive, I'm talking about from the instruction, the delivery, as well as the materials. Are we mandating that districts purchase textbooks that have Black and brown faces in them? That is important, everyone, okay? That is extremely important that our Black and brown students open up a textbook and they see someone that looks like them or that is similar to them. The text needs to be that way, all right? Are we having, do we have teachers who are receiving social justice training? Now, you don't have to run the training if you're an expert in that area, great. But how are we making sure that our teachers have social justice training? How many of your teachers can effectively teach through a cultural competency lens? And your role leader, how are you advocating to make sure that all, and then a very a touch point here, and I hope that now, relevancy and discourse. Are we having courses specifically that touch upon the Black diaspora, Black inventions and inventors and scientists? Or are we just, again, doing the regular, surface level teaching and teaching about the same people over and over and over again, that if our students don't go on to college, they never learn about those things? We need to be an advocate for those things at the high school level and at the middle school level and at the elementary level. Post-secondary studies now, is there a pattern of Black students being overlooked for four-year colleges, scholarships, and FAFSA completion? In your districts, are you seeing, unconscious bias that the Black and brown students predominantly are going to two-year schools and the white students and the Asian students are going to four-year institutions? Just self-reflective. You might not think that that's an issue, but it can be an issue because that might mean that our Black and brown students are being told your path is this way. White and Asian students are being told your path is this way, guys, okay? Some ouches, some leadership reflection ouches. Scholarships. Many of you just had virtual awards night. How many Black and brown students receive scholarship awards? Okay? That's an ouch. No judgment there, but that's an ouch. FAFSA completion. Access to technology right now, they're not going to complete the FAFSA. Well, we know there's a correlation. So if we don't make sure that our students have access to the funds to start their college education, they're not even going to, enroll and continue. And are we perpetuating that problem, right? Just some leadership reflection and processes, all right? Just some ouches here. The other one, examine the climate, the concept of climate specifically in your schools, and make sure that those climates are inclusive. Do not forget about our LGBTQ plus students, please, okay? Inclusivity means everyone, okay? It's not always about color, and we have to be those voices to make sure that our students are being advocated for. How are students welcomed and included and engaged? Think about that. Welcomed, they enroll in your school, they walk in. Who is the first person that they meet? Now, here's the scenario. What if you are the only Black counselor in that school, or the Black educator in that school, and it's a predominantly white school, and that Black student understand or get to see or feel your magnitude? You need a connection with other Black and brown faces. This is why you're a part of this network. The students who enroll, their families have climbed that economic ladder. they've moved into a suburban, district. They need the support too. So please, let's not get hung up in the fact that we have these awesome jobs and careers, and then you have a Black school included, engaged, supported, and transitioned. Please do not forget those babies. Who is collecting the data on how Black students are or are not supported? And is there a standing agenda with your leadership teams to discuss inclusion? And who is holding the leaders accountable for that work? These are all just some protocols for self-reflection. Let's move